The Legendarium podcast is brought to you
by you. So please visit patreon.com/legendarium
to support the show. But for now,
welcome to the Legendarium.
Imagine being able to take a boatload of Stromlight over to Warbreakerville.
Malthus.
Malthus, thank you. I'm struggling with planet names at the moment.
He's got a lot on his mind, Jeff Wu. Don't worry about it.
Warbreaker. Welcome, everybody. Welcome to the Legendarium podcast. This is episode number 302. Today we are discussing Rhythm of War, parts 1 and 2. So roughly the first half of Rhythm of War. These are very long sections. I am Craig. I'm your host. And with me, if he were a Parshendi, he'd have rediscovered the long-lost creep form by now. It's Kenn Johnson.
I am going to punch in your spears.
I don't think I've ever gotten laughter like that out of Ryan and Stephanie.
That was a good one.
Okay, good. All right. And she's Shalon's fifth personality, the one that dropped out of high school and got addicted to Diet Mountain Dew. It's Stephanie Bruckman.
Gross. I can't even imagine what Diet Mountain Dew would taste like.
Sadness and urine. And if Moash can have his own subreddit, then this guy has earned his about 3 times over. It's Ryan Bruckman.
Yeah, as long as it starts with F, I guess that's it works.
Okay. I had at least 2 pretty good jokes that I couldn't tell on this PG-13 podcast. So I'm just going to move along. All right, so welcome everybody to our Rhythm of War discussion, the first of our spoilerific Rhythm of War discussions. So before we get to that, I just want to remind everybody you can find us at thelegendarium.com. It used to be thelegendariumpodcast.com, and you can still type it in, but it'll just take you to the new place. So visit us there. You can find past episodes sorted by author, sorted by series, whatever, and you can find links to the various social channels that we use. So please join us, especially on Discord these days. This is where the most of the action takes place. Although I did make it a point to hop on Reddit for the first time in I don't know how long and get some listener questions for this episode. So that was great. I know that our Reddit people have been a little bit neglected.
Sitting back in the corner going, when are they coming back? Mommy, Daddy, when are you coming back?
I like how we got our stabby and then ran for the door.
Yeah. That's exactly right. Anyway, so yes, visit us at all those places. And if you enjoy what we do, if you enjoy good content like this, then please consider going to patreon.com/legendarium to support the show. I wish I could promise you all sorts of extra goodies and amazing things that, extra content that you're going to get, you can't get for free. No, that's not really the way we do things. We do work hard to bring you some fun content for free here, and we just don't have the time to do a bunch of other stuff. Although, Ryan, you and I have done a couple movie watch-alongs that people can access there. So apparently people have enjoyed them. We should do some more. Yeah. Anyway, but for now, let's move on to Rhythm of War. And now that we've chased away the people who don't really care about us, they ramble a lot. I'm not going to stick around. They're gone. Okay. So now, Rhythm of War.
Thanks for the download.
This is a spoilery discussion. We're not going to spoil the end of the book. We're going to discuss parts 1 and 2. Might get into some interlude stuff, but definitely not past that. Anyway. The other thing to keep in mind is that if you have read this book, then you know that we can't really have a discussion, at least not a free discussion of this, without referencing some other Cosmere books. Mm-hmm. And so if you are concerned about spoilers for Mistborn, Elantris, Warbreaker, those are probably the big ones, maybe White Sand a little bit. Anyway, if you haven't read those other stories and you care, then maybe consider turning back now. Thanks for the download.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. Come back to us when you finish the book.
It's not like we're not gonna give away like the ending of Hero of Ages or something like that, but there are plot points to discuss. And
well, there's literally a very large portion of part 2 that is connected to a major event in one of the other books. So it's like, yeah, it is hard to discuss aspects of this, and this is something actually to speak to Rhythm of War. We have crossed the threshold line of the Cosmere is now blatantly obvious in what we're talking about.
Yep.
In Rhythm of War. when we first did our spoiler-free review, I think we both kind of came to the conclusion that, now you got to read the Cosmere. You can't read this without the rest of Cosmere. And I've changed my tone on that a little bit.
Yeah, I was going to say, I don't know if that accurately reflects how we feel about it or what we said. My thing, and this is fine. This is a fine place to start our discussion of Rhythm of War. So yeah, let's talk about this for a second. As far as I'm concerned, and Ken and Stephanie, you guys can jump in here too. I've argued with this about this a little bit with Drew McCaffrey from Inking Out Loud, and he says essentially that you have to read the other books to get this. I disagree. You don't have to. You can still, they're just fun little plot points or tidbits or extra bits of magic thrown in or whatever that he pulls in from these other stories. You do not have to read the others to enjoy this. However, if you want the full story...
Yeah, it's one of those things, if you're a completionist, for example, if you ever played any of those games where you can see your percentage of completed or whatever, and you're one of those who has to get to 100%.
I hate that because I have to get to 100.
You will want to have read other Cosmere pieces, because at this point, to me, I kind of went back and said, okay, you could read this without reading any other Cosmere books, but you're going to start seeing the road signs that are very clearly marked as that comes from somewhere else.
Right.
Yep.
And you won't be able to ignore that. It may not ruin your read or anything like that, or maybe it may not make it so you don't understand, but you're going to know that there's more information out there about something here versus in the past where it's been a little bit on the lower end, or smaller pieces dropped here and there for you to pick up if you're a Cosmere nod or whatever. Then this is, now it's like, yep, turn left here if you want Warbreaker talk. That's where we're at.
Yeah.
All right, so before we go much further, though, we should probably get a Kenn recap. This is literally why I brought him here. Otherwise, I wouldn't want him anywhere near me.
Honestly, if it gets me on the show, I'm happy to do it.
All right, Kenn. So for those unfamiliar, Kenn, maybe you don't listen to a lot of Blue Team episodes these days. Kenn's recaps they're pretty darn good these days. So really wanted to get one on. Go ahead, Kenn.
All right. Even though you stepped on it because you talked about all of the Cosmere spoilers, because B-Sans, he's dispensed with the Easter eggs and has moved straight to leaving all of the juicy tidbits right on a plate in the middle of the table, consume away. So a year has passed now since the Battle of Thalen City officially kicked off the new desolation, and our favorite Voidbringer's frustrated Odium's plan to get a new Blackthorn for Christmas. Now everything's been sufficiently leveled up, radiance and fused of every flavor all over the place, flying ships, the bondsmith infusing gems with just a touch, only to have Stormlight leached away by Singer Fabrials. It's madness out there. But we've also got Radiance dealing with some heavy trauma. High Marshal Kaladin, he's a High Marshal now, is in a dark place, nightmares, performance issues, punctuated by a run-in with our good old friend Anti-Kaladin, who has fully embraced that it's not my fault life. He gets Cal to freeze up during the maiden mission of Navani's fancy new airship to liberate, more like steal, Hearthstone. That in turn gets him grounded for PTS at a time when Windrunners are increasingly hard to come by because Honor Sprint are refusing to play ball. At the same time, the three faces of Shallan are dealing with some darkness of their own in the form of long repressed childhood trauma nagging at her, but it doesn't keep her from accepting simultaneous missions from Dalinar and Mraize to go to Shadesmar, the capital of the Honor Sprint. It's called Lasting Integrity, as an envoy to convince Honor Sprint to get on board with the Windrunning recruitment plans and also to spring some world hopper from being held captive. All it takes to get into the city is High Boy Scout Adolin agreeing to stand in judgment for the crimes of past humanity. Meanwhile, Kaladin's upward fail gives him the chance to learn just what it means to protect on more of a ground level, and it also, in a moment of Dalinar Ex Machina, puts him squarely in Eurythero when the bulk of the army leaves and the Singers come into the tower. Kind of like their previous attempt, only on crazy steroids, and they're kind of on the clock because the humans, led by Navani, are getting close to learning how to lock up that hate sprint for good. And Venli, you remember her? She's that last listener female in holding both Stormlight and Voidlight, who pretty much single-handedly started the war and who's supposed to be the focus of this book. Well, she wants to take her survivor's guilt to New Casablanca, along with whatever
What
Singers...
are you saying? Are you saying real words right now?
Yeah.
I cannot follow this.
I should have recorded
What
it
is
for
New
you.
Casablanca? Okay, sorry. Go on, Ken. Sorry,
She
New
wants to
Casablanca.
find a place that's all their own, maybe
Okay.
Bali High. Would you rather that?
Okay, all right. Sorry, go on.
All right, along with whatever Singers/listeners will follow her, because it's become clear that immortality of the fused comes with the small side effect of being insane the longer that fused bodies or fused body hop and continue on. It's almost done, Craig, I swear. And some of them are really old, so they're really crazy. Now the most psycho of them all is Eurythero and wants to employ Navani's fabrial expertise, knowing that Navani could probably use her work against her. Seems like I recall reading something about pride somewhere, maybe in a Rothfuss book, I don't know. Anyway, so question 1, though. Why can Kaladin still operate while Teft can't? Same surge of adhesion, right? What's different? That's for you, Ryan. We'll talk about that. The sickness going through the tower. What's the? Is this the new plague that's been rumored, and how big a deal will it become? And would it help if the citizens just mask up? I'm wondering. So,
Nice.
I guess we have finally seen round 1 of that eternal which investiture would win debate. So, does Aelin find a way to resurrect Maya and become an edge dancer, or does he bond Notum and become a windrunner? So the thrill, that was bottled up in a ruby, then dropped into the middle of the ocean. Unobserved. That seems prudent. I don't know. And last one. Are we supposed to be glad that Taravangian avoided being shard blading that he so richly deserved just because the stupid him has feelings or something? He should still be dead. That's all I got. I should have written a out cue, but I didn't because I didn't. So anyway.
Okay.
That's all we've got time for, folks. Thanks for coming to the
There's our
lecture.
episode.
Stormlight
Seriously.
Insight.
Jiminy Christmas, Ken.
You wanted a recap.
I just made enemies of half of our listeners who love Ken recaps more than life itself. So sorry
No,
about that.
There's a lot. It's a Sanderson book, and it's an epic one. There's a lot that happens. There's a lot to cover.
Parts 1 and 2 are literally half the book.
So
It is insane how much he put in there.
These are long sections, and this actually brings up something that I wanted to make sure that I mentioned, which is if you are new to this show and this is the first time you're listening to us, then please understand we are not a lore podcast. We will touch on some of those things, but we're not going to go into depth. We're covering 600 pages of book right now. We're not going to do details very much.
Yeah.
Right. So
This is not a chapter by chapter book.
yeah,
or,
exactly.
podcast.
This is not an in-depth read through or anything. So, go check out Inking Out Loud. They take things a lot slower than we do and get more into depth if that's what you're looking for. So, for us, okay, let's talk about this. Do we want to tackle any of Ken's questions, or do we just
You
really
asked me
just
one right
leave
off the
them
top.
behind?
I did, because
it?
that one's the most curious one to me, is why is Kaladin able to operate but Teft isn't? They're both windrunners.
level of their current windrunner level.
They're
Is he not
oaks.
level 3 also? Can he not summon a... Is Teft only level 2?
Their current level of investiture, their current level of windrunnerness. That is all I'm going to say about that.
Okay.
Because it's literally a plot point to explore through the rest of the book as to why Kaladin is there, and the people who aren't affected by the invasion, and they talk about it. They say
Because they talk about Kaladin and Lift are the only ones
Right.
that are still.
yeah, and
I
it's
have-
because of
Awake.
something different about them.
I have a feeling, we might as well hit this right now, it's kind of a tangent, but I have a feeling that Lift is specifically because cultivation did something to, when she came for her boon and her curse, she did something to
boy.
deliberately keep her able to operate in this circumstance, which is why she
Ken.
eats Stormlight instead of absorbs it, that sort of thing.
I think you have got a good eye on a good potential track.
So my stock response now, when people say things like this about something that I've read ahead on, is, I like the way you're thinking about this. Yeah,
It's a nice,
All
safe
right.
way to go about that.
That's an interesting
Yeah,
thought.
I like where your mind's at.
I want to say this, mindset-wise, if you want to realize, back in a couple books ago, when someone was trying to they wanted to become a Knight Radiant, they talked about, the Stormfather says to Dalinar, you become Radiant and then say the words. We think of it as like these flat levels, like you're a level 1, you're a level 2, you're a level 3. No, your level of investiture and intent and everything, that is a
sliding
bottle that
scale.
fills up and can change and things like that. So
Right. That makes sense.
they might be the same level of Windrunner, but their investiture and intent levels would not necessarily be the same.
Okay.
I can buy that. By the way, I'm the only one here that has not read past
Has not finished the
part
book.
2. Just FYI, listener.
Yeah, the rest of us have finished the book. Ken has not.
I am the suck.
You, what?
That's twice I got him.
What? Did he literally say what I think he just said?
Yes.
Okay. All right. Moving on, please. Dear God, move on. All right.
It's like Kaladin's the wretch.
No.
Sure.
Okay.
Okay. I'm so thrown off right now. Really, I'm all verklempt. Okay, so let's go to some listener questions.
Okay.
And I'm guessing that the listener questions are going to cover everything that we would have talked about anyway, so it's nice to bring them in. The first one, I'm actually going to go to Reddit first. We've got Reddit and Discord questions. So I went on Reddit and I said, hey, we're discussing Rhythm of War. What do you guys want us to talk about? And Heir of Selenius says, anything but Rhythm of War. So
That kind of defeats the purpose.
I'm pretty sure that he's not listening or she's not listening at this point. So
we'll move on to the next one then. Okay.
Are you tequila? Because that's awfully salty.
Spoken like somebody who's never had tequila.
I know.
Okay, so let's go to Discord. Modern Water Rider. I like that name.
I love names. I love
we've
online names.
had quite a few new people pop up on the Discord. She's one of them. So what did you think of the science in this book? Personally, I loved it. Can't wait to dig into the inspirations for it. This does work for the whole book, but kind of get a little bit at the beginning, especially with the fourth bridge, right? That's a big point or
you have the fourth bridge that you can reference with this advancement in Fabrial technology. You have the epigraphs with Navani, who is laying out how Fabrials work. There's a handful of things early in the book that are a lot more sciencey than we normally have dealt with.
Yeah.
And it sat there and, I'm reading through these and I'm wondering, am I going to need to understand the science of this in order to enjoy or to figure out what's going on? And that was an early concern I had going through. And Navani's like, well, to do that, to bring a spren into a Fabrial, you have to do this. And it's not like it's heavy mathematics or anything like that, but there is a consistency to the science there. And I had a little bit of concern, but ultimately unwarranted in my opinion.
So are you saying that you can pay as close attention as you want, but you don't have to enjoy the story?
Yeah,
as far as how the science works on Roshar?
It's one of those things where when you get into discussions about soft magic versus hard magic, when you're literally laying out the science of something, a part of your magic system in there, you can potentially go really far in laying out, here's all the rules and everything, and it can become problematic. And that was something I was looking at. So, but ultimately the science in this, I think it is a different direction than we have dealt with in the past. It is something to be aware of, and you don't have to understand it all, but you do need to understand some concepts.
I think it's added, in my opinion, to Navani's character. I mean, at the very, the preface of the book, we have this conversation between Navani and Gavilar where he's telling her that she's not a scholar. She's going to amount to nothing in her life. Mm-hmm. And then we jump forward to where she is now, and she is trying so hard, I think, to prove him wrong. This was the last conversation she ever had with her husband, and I think adding the science to it and having it come from her voice really adds to Navani's character, and we get to see her growth as a person that we haven't really got to see in the previous books.
I think it fleshes her out a little bit, too, in the sense that I don't know if I looked at it as her trying to prove Gavilar wrong necessarily, but it did show to me that where she's come from, and really Gavilar, I think, was wrong. I mean, she clearly she's not the one who's got his hands on doing all of the engineering work, but oftentimes projects of such a manner are bankrolled by somebody who has a great idea but doesn't have the skill, so they get the people that have the skill and say, hey, what about this? Hey, what about this? And that's what she's doing. I mean, there's nothing shameful about being a patron of something like that,
Right.
And this is an opportunity, since we talked about the science, but this is directly connected to Navani, because as a character, now Navani is front and center versus being a secondary. She is a prime character in this storyline. Which is good. It's great. She's a really exciting character. She's something different than what we've had, different perspective. And if you go back and you think back to Navani's timeline and her storyline up to this point, this is a recurring doubt in her mind, because she talks about when she first shows up with Dalinar that the court has dismissed her, that she's basically just the person who has pet scientists who do things for her. But in this book, in the epigraphs and what she's written in there, and in the things that she does in this, and especially with the fourth bridge and more to come, we see her expertise shine forth in this realm, and she's the only character like this available to us right now. The closest person I would say to Navani in terms of thought process and styling is Yasna, and there's still a big gap between the two of them.
Yeah.
So for those who are really excited about Navani, or who don't necessarily need the broken hero, the king who is reluctant to take his throne, any of those things, this is a different perspective.
Let me throw this out there. The character, from that perspective, the character who is closest to Navani so far is Adolin. In that all of our other heroes, I'm thinking through them. I'm trying to see if anybody doesn't fit this, but they're all broken, right? That's kind of the theme of the Knights Radiant. Yeah. They're all broken, silly, is what
right.
Syl
That's
says.
what Syl says.
And Adolin has never fit that. He's kind of the everyman prince, whatever. but he's not. It's not that he doesn't have his issues. It's not that he doesn't have things he's dealing with. Of course, he's a person. He has those things. And Navani is the same way. She's not broken, but she does have a chip on her shoulder. Mm-hmm. And we can see part of the reason why with the prologue, which we probably should discuss at some point. But yeah, so she is more of a generally accessible character than especially our three major heroes in Dalinar, Kaladin, and Shallan. With those three, I think it's safe to say that they tend to, one of them will resonate with a specific type of reader. Yeah. And that specific type of reader might not care as much about the other two characters' storylines. But Navani is generally accessible because we've all felt that kind of imposter syndrome. We've all felt that chip on our shoulder, like we have something to prove. So does that make sense? Yeah. And Adolin is kind of in a similar vein for me. Is generally accessible. Yeah.
She's also, well, I don't know. I didn't think this through very well, and I'm immediately backtracking my thought. She is. I've debated whether or not I feel that Navani is our strongest female character in this book.
Okay, so who are... let's keep it to parts 1 and 2, but who are the contenders? We've got her, we've got Shallan, we've got... what's her name? The listener?
Venli.
And
you've got Yasna, barely.
The problem is, up to this point, we have not had much Yasna in there. She is the predominant female character in parts 1 and 2, with the exception of Shallan. And Shallan is currently broken into 3 women. And it is a little bit harder to identify, to work with that.
It's easier to say that Shallan, Vale, and Radiant are all female characters within the book, instead of Shallan as 3 characters, because they are 3 very separate personalities.
Yeah, I agree.
3 and counting at this point.
So it was just one of those things that in a series up till now where we had Shallan, we've had Yasna, and we've had her on the side, for her to take such a strong role, I think, is a shift for Brandon. I've already harped on it plenty that it was a new perspective and everything. But when we're looking for someone to follow and to give us an example of strong female characters in literature, Navani really steps forward in this one to me, up to this point in the book, for sure.
Okay. Yeah. There's a tease for you. Up to this point in the book. Just wait until she sucks later. Yeah. You're going to hate her.
She fails.
Wait until part 4.
Yeah. This is an exceptionally difficult type of book to only talk about the first 2 parts of. But that's what we're going to do.
I'm very anxious to get to the rest of it.
Before we do another listener question, let's talk about the prologue a little bit. Let's backtrack, talk about the prologue. So if you haven't been paying attention, as you've read 3 other Stormlight books, the prologues all depict the night of Gavilar's assassination. So the first one was through Zeth's eyes. Words of Radiance gave us
Navani's.
Yasna's.
Not Navani,
Oathbringer gave us Dalinar's.
No, gave us Eshonai's.
Oh, yes, thank you. Okay,
yeah.
My mistake.
And then Navani's in
now we have
part 4.
Navani. Okay, so yeah, in case you weren't confused before, glad to help.
Which,
You
by
are
the
now.
way, I went and listened to those, and I want to put all 4 of those together
That's
somehow.
kind of the point. By the time you
Yeah.
finish the 5th book, you will have a complete view of the different perspectives of that night. Because that was something that, with the release of Oathbringer and going back to that night, because the first 2 times it's like, oh, okay, these are just different perspectives, whatever. But now that it's a
Right.
consistent theme across 4 books, that this is what we're going to do every time, it's more revealing each piece of what the larger scale of what Gavilar's trying to accomplish in here.
Yeah.
Because every time that they've revealed something, the questions that I've had coming out of it have changed.
Well, and yeah. Oh, sorry, keep going.
Well, it's
So what are your questions now?
the questions have changed, but the first question has always been like the first one was always, what did he have? Because he had a glowing rock there, and now we actually get somewhat of an answer to that when Navani talks about she finds them. She finds Gavilar talking to his special friends,
To Nalan and
to Nail and
Restaris is who the other one was. I can't remember who the other one, if he was named, but
I don't remember, but he's literally talking to the heralds.
yeah.
And he has these special colored stones, and that his scale. This whole time we've been thinking his scale has been on the. We're trying to bring back the Knights Radio and everything. No, he is literally on the verge. He's trying to become bigger than all of that.
Yeah.
And
He's trying to ascend,
Yes.
right?
He wants to become a shard.
So, oh man.
And it's crazy to see how that builds up from part 1, which I went back and listened to the other prologues after parts 1 and 2. I remember our questions after Way of Kings was, what was he trying to do? They were so simple, our questions before we got to Rhythm of War, and now we can see that he was kind of insane and a little bit dangerous.
Yeah, book 1, Gavilar's a good guy.
Right.
Yeah.
You finish that one, you're like, oh, he's a good guy who got killed.
Yeah.
And we got to figure out what he was figuring out. He was right on the edge of something great. And every subsequent piece has been like, oh, no, he's not a good guy.
By the time we get to the flashbacks in Oathbringer, we realize he's questionable here. And now we know this guy, he was
From our
gonna
current
do something
perspective, yes.
from our certain point of view.
Do it, Ryan.
From a certain point of view.
Okay, thank you. All right. So we get 2 revelations. Yeah, and we've talked about both of them. The first one is kind of what Gavilar's working on. The second one is that he's a giant penis. He is just a dick. And that's new information. And what that does, it gives us insight into Navani's current situation in Urithiru and why she's doing, or at least part of why she's doing what she's doing. I'm of the mind that she would be doing this anyway.
Mm-hmm.
This just gives her a little added motivation to prove herself. Anyway, so yeah, is there anything else to talk about with the prologue?
Well, it shows us 2 other things. It shows us that Gavilar was aware of his and Dalinar, or her and Dalinar's affection, and he was kind of pissed about it, not just brushing it off. He used that as kind of a cudgel against her once in a while when they would start to argue. So that was interesting to know that he knew more about what was going on, and that I didn't realize that. Well, I mean, of course I didn't realize because we never saw anything, that they were so bitter toward each other, especially toward the end there. That
Right.
Gavilar and Navani seemed like, if not a loving couple, that they were at least a unified couple, and they were on the same page up until his assassination. And now we know that's not true.
It was an emotional sequence.
It really was.
It really was. When she has the big fight with him and goes off and writes a prayer for him to die.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
And has to deal with that guilt the rest of her life that he then died. And is it her fault that she prayed to her gods and it happened? Yeah.
And honestly, I do not have an answer to this question. I assume that book 5 or maybe later we'll get some juicy stuff like this, but it actually made me wonder, what is the basis for burning prayers? Because now we know that the Tranquiline Halls are a real place.
Mm-hmm.
And is there something beyond just religious symbolism to the burning of prayers? And the way these glyphs work, because we know from Elantris that sometimes the writing and artwork can have power. Is there some kind of actual real communication happening? And I don't know.
It's a potential place to follow down, because the idea of physically creating something so it has an existence in all 3 realms, destroying it in one doesn't mean that it's gone from the others.
Right.
Yeah.
Necessarily. Like, potentially there could be something there. That would be an interesting way to look at that. versus just a, hey, Almighty, here's a fax.
Burning facts.
Okay, and this actually brings us to another Reddit question. This one was from Bila Bear. I don't know. Whatever.
Build-A-Bear?
It's not Build-A-Bear. It's pretty close to that. But anyway, which character or characters do you have the most respect for? Personally, I can't even imagine what Navani's day-to-day life is like, having to balance the general idiocy of the public along with Dalinar's noble yet infuriating stubbornness, all while keeping up appearances and never letting herself seem weak. She also doesn't seem to have any intimate personal relationships with anyone besides Dalinar, not even Yasna. Thoughts? And this kind of feeds into, is she, as Ryan says, maybe the strongest female character that we have in the series so far? Is that what you said, or is it just in this book?
Not in the series, but in this book for sure.
Yeah.
She's definitely stepped up into that discussion. Otherwise, I would say Navani is with this person. I agree. Everything that she has been through, everything she's had to deal with up to this point, does make me respect her a whole lot more.
And it's not even just that she dealt with all this stuff in her past and she's still functioning. That's admirable enough. But it's like this person says, the day-to-day Navani, we've all met somebody like this where you marvel that this person can get so many things done.
Mm-hmm.
So does time work differently for you?
Oh,
Do
yeah.
you have, are there 58 hours in your day? Because I only get 24.
Yeah.
F you, buddy, for being able to do all that stuff. Navani is that kind of person where it's just like, how do you do it? And she's really great to watch. So, sorry, Ryan, I think you were going to say something else.
No, well, the other characters, I don't really have, at this point in the book, my respect for them has not really increased or decreased because we've seen just a natural progression in their lives and what's happening. Kaladin's High Marshal now. Dalinar's taken his role as bondsmith. There's nothing that has been like, wow, I'm really impressed that you're doing this now, because it's the natural sequence of what should be happening for these characters. The closest one to that in sequence is, for me, Shallan moving into something that is a very frustrating. It was really frustrating for me reading through the three personalities. Bothered me in Oathbringer. Like, I had a hard time coming to terms with that. And the fact that I felt like we're doubling down, we're going to be doing with this for longer. My respect for her as a character in balancing all three of them. My respect for Brandon as a writer and being able to make it so I didn't hate this anymore because of how that was balanced out, increased. But I think that though Shallan is the other character that I have an increased respect for, in the sense that she has figured out how to live with her disability. I hesitate to call it a disability at the moment, but that's the best way to put it for me. She's the next one in terms of that.
Okay. Stephanie, I'm going to ask you for your example next, so be thinking about it. But the one I want to bring up is Adolin. My respect for Adolin has gone up, and it's essentially from a single scene. There's a lot of stuff with Adolin in parts 1 and 2, and he's a great character through all of it. But I love the scene when he makes Kaladin come to the party.
Yes.
Yeah.
When he recognizes that, no, this is not a night when you should be alone. You have friends, and we get to be a part of your life. Let's go. That kind of, some might call it overbearing, but I know that I've been in some pretty dark places sometimes, and I would have loved to have somebody cut through my bull crap. Oh, I just want to be alone. I just want to brood with my thoughts. I just want to Kaladin it up in my little studio and be alone forever. And that's a stupid idea.
Yeah.
Come out, and remember that you have people that care about you. And I loved that scene with Adolin. So my respect for him went up. Stephanie.
Yeah, of course, I have to go second when you stole what I was going to say.
Oh, really? I'm sorry. I was trying to give you time to think about it.
So I think the easiest for me to say is like Navani and Adolin have definitely stepped up. And I think that that's personally what Brandon has meant for them to do is we have Kaladin, Shallan, and Dalinar, who are all still kind of in that same spot where they're coming into who they're supposed to be. But we have definitely where Kaladin is on the broken side and he knows it and he's trying to come to grips with everything that's happened to him throughout the past. And so it's kind of hard to be like, yay, I love Kaladin, because he's in a really dark place right now. And reading some of these dark places is difficult. So when you have someone like Navani and especially Adolin, who are so optimistic it's easier to enjoy what they have to say and to see them push forward with the story, pushing past the darkness that some of our other characters are dealing with right now. Because especially as we're learning more about Adolin and as they get into Shadesmart and some of the stuff that he decides to take on himself. I mean, his wife is insane and he deals with it. And they even comment about, I don't know how you manage this relationship with these three women. Like the fact that you trust Shallan and her control of her personalities so much that he knows that he doesn't have to worry that Vale is out partying and drinking and doing who knows what, because he knows that between the three of them, they're going to keep that under check. I mean, how many men can actually say, yes, I have that much faith and respect in my wife to know that her other personalities aren't going to take over sometime.
As Ryan smiles.
That's like, don't look at me. Don't look at me.
It's something that I wonder a little bit about with all of our other characters. You know, we have Teft's addiction, we have Kaladin's depression, we have whatever other characters are dealing with. Shallan, I think one of the things about her storyline and her character flaw, you know, whatever, the brokenness that she exhibits, the thing that's always bothered me just a little bit is that it's like, this is an incredibly rare psychological phenomenon. This is not something we all repress and we all avoid and whatnot, but this idea of dissociative personality, what is it? Dissociative
personality disorder now.
Yeah, there you go. Personality disorder. It's so rare.
I have a really hard time talking about this at this stage in the book.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. And maybe this is something we can come back to. I guess I just wanted to put that out there that this is, I loved Shallan so much in The Way of Kings and Words of Radiance. And because I felt like she was kind of accessible to somebody who had dealt with that version that we had seen up to that point of just kind of repressing your memories and, you know, please don't make me think about that. I don't really want to think about that. Mm-hmm. That's really recognizable. And then she really, really goes off the deep end in Oathbringer, and we kind of have that here even more so. And it's been harder for me to say like, oh yeah, I really identify with Shallan and her struggles. And I imagine I'm not alone in that.
No, I'm having a hard time with Shallan in this book. I will say that I'm impressed. It feels like Brandon is handling what could be a sticky topic to write about really well, though, in terms of her multiple personalities and everything. It would be easy to make that kind of a punchline or a caricature or use it as some, or minimize it somehow, but it feels like he's taking it seriously and he's writing it very respectfully. That being said, I have a hard time dealing with all of it. And that's me. I mean,
I had a hard time remembering that she was all one character. Because in my mind, as I'm listening to this book throughout all of this, to me, it was there's Shallan, there's Vale, and there's Radiant. And they are three very separate women. And I forget that they're all in one body. And so as they're listening and they're conversing with other people, I was like, okay, well, yeah, this is Vale. Shallan wasn't even a part of it. So as you're talking about, you're having a hard time dealing and like relating to Shallan, I think relating to Shallan and everything Shallan is dealing with is still the same, because she's still dealing with that. If you take out the fact that she has two other personalities that are dealing with their own problems, and they're that support system for her, but she still has to deal with anything in her past that she's repressed, that she's trying to remember. Anytime it comes up, she closes in on herself. I think she's still very relatable if you think of Shallan as an individual and not as Shallan with three personalities.
Perhaps, yeah,
I like that. That's a good way to think about it. I think this also kind of on a more meta note, this Shallan thing you just reminded me, it would be impossible to read from a lesser author because you couldn't keep track of, you know, which personality was in control at whatever time. But Brandon is kind of showing his skill here in he's really Robert Jordaning the crap out of this. Robert Jordan had one of his gifts was in the narration, not just the dialogue, but in the narration. You always knew whose perspective you were in because he had such a strong voice for each character that you're following along with, and so Sanderson does the same thing here, where you always know which personality.
Well, and even going back to
like
Kate Redding, and I mean, as I'm listening to it, because I'm listening to all of this, I don't actually read them. So how well she does as a voice artist, making sure I know that this is Vale talking because of the way that she kind of she falls back
She
into this.
inflects a little bit.
Yeah.
Different.
They all kind of sound similar, but they are all very still 3 distinct voices that she gives her characters. And I think that also helped me in my mind separate them as 3 separate characters.
Nice. Okay. Well, let's go to another listener question. This one's from DM Pock on what's that thing called? Discord. Join us on Discord. So DM Pock says, I'm curious how the team feels about Liren. Does he have a point, or is he just a judgmental ass? That's a great way to put it. So, Ryan, you can confirm. I was texting you
Yes.
I maybe 2 or 3 times throughout the book. You read it before I did. You devoured the book in about 4 days. It took me, I started it right after that, and then it took me about a week to read it. And I must have texted you 3 times throughout the book and said, I hate Liren.
Oh my
I hate
gosh.
him so much.
I did the same thing. I came storming up the stairs listening to my book. I'm like, Ryan, what is going on?
So,
Oh, yeah.
did Brandon lay it on too thick? I don't know.
No.
I don't think so, but
Here's the thing with Liren, because yes, I despised Liren especially at this point in the book, like parts 1 and 2.
so maybe we should tell people why we hate Liren so much. So Ryan, set it up for us.
Here's the thing: Liren is a pacifist. In the past, he has shared this in Way of Kings and everything with Kaladin. Like, you don't need to kill to save people. You don't, and he's made a
Right.
point, and it's felt like this really nice moral. Like, this is a person with a life first centered thing. He's a doctor, surgeon, this sort of thing, and that's what it's felt. Now, Liren is going so far as to saying that protecting yourself, that doing what Kaladin is at his core doing, is wrong. So now he's starting to tell his son, it's not just you can't just save by killing. It's now you're wrong for doing this, and all of a sudden we get this father with a moral compass to this CrossFit preaching angry level.
What?
Like
Self-righteous.
self-righteous.
Is that a CrossFit thing?
I'm
Just because they were
Did
emphatic.
you just alienate the strongest 5% of our listenership?
Yes, I've been trying to stir a fight somewhere, and this is how I'm going to do it. No, just in the sense of when you believe in something so much and so strongly that you have to tell everybody that this is how it is. And everything. Like,
you
yes.
mean vegans?
Or atheists.
how can we?
Who else can we alienate? Come
I
on, this is
appreciate
fun.
the 3 of you still listening, and the 2 of you who are bots. No, that's essentially what Liren has done. Is he's moved moral compass to the point where
He's ideologically blinkered.
yes, and that it starts to get frustrating because we also see Kaladin and what he's doing, and I understand some people might look at that. Well, maybe he's right. Maybe Liren is right about this. They're doing this. You are welcome to entertain that thought. If someone points a sharp, pointy thing at me, I'm probably going to respond differently. Like I'm sorry. I'm a little more connected to Kaladin in this. I don't necessarily think that Liren is right here. I think there was a time that Liren is right, but yeah,
I think he had a moment in Liren had a moment in his life where he went from the moral high ground to that self-righteous, because I'm really hoping I'm in the right spot where he's having the conversation where he's talking about maybe it's better if we just let the Parshendi control us.
That's
Am I good?
The end of part 2.
Okay,
Yeah.
I can still have that. Okay, I was I'm not going too far, am I?
Yeah, and that's the part that pissed me off
And
the most.
he's
but
sitting
keep
here,
going.
well, what if this is better? What if we let them control us and this is better? And I think when you go back to when kind of Kaladin's life started falling apart with the High Lord that was over their town, whatever his
Rashon.
name is. Yeah, and that moment where Liren really lost both of his sons. I think it was that moment where Liren finally realized that battling those that are above me is not worth it anymore. And that's where I think he finally took a really hard left on his moral compass to the point where it's let's just not kill anyone anymore and let's let whoever's going to rule. And
That's
I think
a really astute point. I like that.
And I think there was a moment in his life. Like, I think the way that he raised Kaladin was great. I think he had a really nice thought process of, yes, I am a healer, I am a surgeon, I'm going to do what's best. But after losing his 2 sons, I think it broke him.
It's and
I
yes,
think so.
because I think he addresses that point where it's if I hadn't tried to keep the spheres from Rashon, I would still have both my sons at my side, and that's the big character shift. And because we loved him, we loved Lirin at the beginning, and what he was willing to do to try and stand up to other people, and you can kind of see a little bit of where Kaladin got, between his mother and Lirin's drive to do what's right and to protect everything, and then we find out Lirin cheated, and then he had to fight, and then he lost his sons and everything. So now he decided to become a one-note person, and that I think is the most frustrating thing, because he was a likable, lovable character until he's ready to throw his own son under the bus when the Parshendi come in.
I've never really liked Lirin. I respected him more in the first books, to your point, Ryan, but I never liked him. He always felt small-minded to me.
Okay.
But whatever. Yeah, I freaking hate Lirin in this book. Okay, so somebody else, Death by Zamboni, another fantastic name on Discord, says the scene toward the end of part 2 in which Kaladin kills the listener soldier in front of his father was significant for me. Here's why. While I was reading it, I was rooting for Kaladin to win the fight, then felt chided when Lirin condemned him for killing. After thinking about it, I felt that Lirin was completely in the right, and it made me realize that I have been conditioned to crave and root for violence in stories. Your thoughts? Ryan, you want to take this one?
Yes, you have been conditioned to crave violence, and you have been conditioned to do all that. You're still wrong.
There you go.
I say that jokingly. I understand the perspective that you're like, oh yeah, maybe we shouldn't be wanting fighting, and Lirin is right on this. In the larger scale, though, what that would do, not just to the book, but literally to give up his son to the Parshendi in this, I'm sorry, that is wrong. That's a father who has currently lost his value scale.
And when you think about what Kaladin's actually fighting for, he's not fighting to just kill some listener. Like, it's not like, oh, I'm just going to battle this guy because he's here. Like, he's about to take his best friend. Like, he is putting his life on the line for his best friend. And I think that's the difference that Lirin does not realize as he is calling out his son for killing someone. That he doesn't realize that there is a bigger picture than just killing. There is a reason behind the killing, and whether that is the moral reason or not is, I think that.
Let me ask this. At this stage, if Kaladin listens to his father and lets the Parshendi come in and take Teft and does this, has he broken his protection oath?
Well, yeah.
I would think so. I would absolutely think that.
But I could see an argument for no, but I would think yes.
I think in the long run, he would have broken his spirit. I think that would have taken Kaladin away from who Kaladin is. And I don't think that Kaladin could have done that without breaking himself.
Yeah.
Agreed.
So
I think
screw you, Lirin, up through at least part 2. So.
Oh, great. Now I got to see where this goes.
Don't think too much about that sentence structure. Okay, so let's go back to a Reddit question. And I want to go to the Harmony letter. Waniwan says...
Wani.
Definitely discuss the Harmony letter. Ken, I believe you are prepared to help us discuss the Harmony letter.
It is long.
We don't need to read the whole thing, but
okay.
Do you want to just give us some highlights? What is the Harmony letter?
Harmony letter is the epigraphs in part 2 of every chapter in part 2. And it's a letter from Harmony, who is, since we're in the spoilers, he is in the Wax and Wane second series of Mistborn, and he has the shards of ruin and preservation, and he's written a letter to Wit or to Hoyd, or that's who we think it is. He doesn't actually say. Is that
it is
the Wanderer? So, talking about how Wit has written him a letter and said, hey, talk to the other shards and get them on board with stopping Odium because dude is clearly insane and we got to stop him before he splinters all of us and takes over as the one sole god in the universe, in the Cosmere. So, and that's Harmony's response to Wit is the epigraphs in part 2.
Right.
There's a lot of
that's not shelling it, but
yeah, there's a lot of Cosmere lore in this. It is the first time that I can think of in this series when we have had a definitive world hopper character that we're aware of from another series speaking directly to Hoyd, where we know who the other character is. We've had Frost, we've had other people that we've spoken with, but this is the first time we have that happen. And in this sequence, I'm pretty sure it's in this sequence, we get a bunch of Cosmere stuff that just kind of happens.
Oh, it's just, as somebody put it, I can't remember, Reddit, Discord, somebody was talking about the name dropping of the shards.
Well, he name drops 8 shards or so, yeah.
Yeah, and that's 4 new of them. There are 16 shards, and we now have 14 names, so we added 4 more on this one. Not every Cosmere reveal needs fanfare, and this didn't get fanfare, and that's fine. It was kind of one of those things where it's like, oh, whoa, that's awesome. But we get a better understanding if you piece all these together and read the letter in whole as to how Odium is currently functioning. There is a lot there, which we will unpack more later, I will say. But this is, I did not, the first time that I read this, I did not catch that it was Harmony that wrote these. I was like,
oh, really?
Really?
I didn't.
It was
really, the only reason I caught it is because it's Sazed's voice from the Mistborn audiobooks.
Is it
to
really?
me, it was kind of to the point.
He uses the same voice when he's reading through those, and it's Sazed, which
I caught it
if
because
you've read Mistborn, I hope.
in like chapter
Hey,
30,
we spoiler alerted. So
chapter 38, 39, something like that, he talks about the shards of ruin or preservation, which he is not ruin or preservation, but they are in me. And I'm like, well, that's Sazed. Okay.
Well, I'm tearing through this book in 4 days, having to wait 30 seconds for the first page of every chapter to load out of a blurred thing. So I'm just kind of like, let's go.
that's right. You were doing the PDF.
Yeah, I did not catch it the first time, but yes, it's very clear and obvious once you go back and look at it who it is.
Just bear in mind that I caught something Ryan didn't on first.
It's
pass,
okay.
so.
I have to be on high alert this time. I've already been warned that people are going to be watching my Cosmere on the,
Oh, that's right. Is Jaffu ready to pick a fight with you?
Jaffu said he was going to be very nitpicky, so I'm aware Jaffu is staring at my nits. So,
Wow.
At your what?
Well, he might be the only one. All right. So, anything else on the Harmony letter?
That's roughly it. Harmony, he basically points out that the shard and the vessel are separate, but they might be similar in intent. And the shard is the power, but it's kind of driven by the motivations of the vessel. So if the person is crazy and the shard is crazy, then you're in really trouble. But
investiture that is not controlled develops a will of its own.
yeah.
With this story, so somebody asked us, or somebody said, Piscoticus, whatever, on Reddit says, is it just me, or was there everything Cosmere kind of starting to come together a little? Metals, colors, and all the rest. So we've kind of talked about this a little bit. I was curious. Okay, so yes, obviously we've had some colors. We've had metals that we've discussed in this book so far, right?
Yes.
Colors, metals,
and then there's the
breaths.
scene with Xyle and Kaladin. Is that in part 1?
Chapter 15. Oh,
okay.
what a great one.
So
Ken knows what we're talking about. We can continue on.
is that when he?
No. Okay, so there's...
You know what? Okay, we're gonna go. I'm gonna go ahead and say that Piscoticus did not note that this is only about parts 1 and 2, but then neither did I apparently. So, okay, so we'll move on from that. There's gonna be even more.
If you want to
Cosmere
talk,
stuff.
if you want to talk Cosmere lore, it will probably have to be after we finish the book
Yeah.
as a dedicated piece, because that's
Sorry, everybody.
I think that needs to be done because this one is so steeped in it. There are at least 4 different systems that they talk about in parts 1 and 2.
But
Doesn't Xyle use breath though?
Yes.
In that fight.
Yes, he
Yes.
does. And Kaladin, because we're watching from Kaladin's perspective, there are all these little things that happen in that fight sequence where he sees a face in a sheet and things like that, and then he doesn't understand it. Like, he gets Stromlight and he gets all the other. He doesn't understand what this is. But
how this fabric's coming to life and attacking him,
Right?
And all the little things, like he's got the rope that's wrapped around him, and or he's using not a scarf, but basically a scarf.
Yeah.
He's using those things. Like, so for those who are familiar with Warbreaker and how breath works and everything, it's this really cool sequence, and you get to experience it through the perspective of somebody who doesn't understand this other form of investiture. And it brings up, there's another question, because I did peruse a little bit in Discord and Reddit a little bit, and I don't know how much we can discuss. Maraise talks about what the purpose of the Ghost Bloods is.
And that is?
That they want to control the movement of Stormlight or of investiture off of Roshar to other places.
To use it in other, Cosmere
because
lands.
we all love trade agreements. They make for the best movies and the best stories. I cannot wait for the blockade of Roshar. Yes.
That's a great point.
Now that's wind running.
Wow. Nice. Does that make the story feel too small for you? Do you know what I mean? 'Cause that's part of the thing with episode 1, where it's like, we're talking about Star Wars, trade agreements and all that. It's like, if you actually try to pay attention to the story in episode 1, you immediately fall asleep. Because who gives a crap? She must sign the treaty, the trade agreement. Who cares? Like aggressive snoring commences. Did that happen for you in this case?
No. And I will tell you that the only reason that that's the case is because of where we are in the storyline.
Yeah.
This kind of goes back to the first thing. Is this where the Cosmeres come together? Yeah. We're about to hit a major timeline crux point for the Cosmere as a whole in the next, in the next book type thing.
Yeah.
That's just where we're at. It's naturally time to approach Cosmere at large. What this means, though, is we look at this and go, well, that doesn't seem like such a bad thing or such a big deal. Like, why should I care? Until you start looking at other worlds and what it would mean if you could carry things to that. Imagine being able to take a boatload of Stormlight over to Warbreakerville.
Malthus.
Malthus, thank you. I'm struggling with planet names at the
That
moment.
was fantastic.
He's got a lot on his mind, Jeff Wu. Don't worry about it.
Warbreakerville.
Warbreakerville.
I'm sorry. You broke me. That was it. That was the one. Okay.
But what it would mean to be able to do that sort of thing.
I'm sorry. As soon as you started talking again, I heard it again. Oh, okay. I need to get past this. Be professional. Whew. All right. Here we go.
That's what we're looking at, is just what it means to the rest of the Cosmere to have a source that replenishes itself in a place, to go to other places where it does not necessarily replenish in the same way.
Yeah.
And whoever controls that could be the most powerful force in the Cosmere.
So essentially, Stormlight is an unlimited energy source.
Pretty much.
Right?
Relatively speaking, yes.
Yeah.
It's a renewable energy source.
Yeah, there you go. This is Cosmere Green Energy Solutions, whatever.
Stormlight is arc technology.
Yeah, this is the solar panel version of renewable tech here.
All right, so there's a lot to look forward to. All right, so we're coming up on the end of our time here. So I think we've covered some listener.
So little.
I know.
Oh my gosh.
We've covered some listener questions. There's a ton more to talk about. Honestly, there really, really is. I mean, I'm tempted to do another episode on parts 1 and 2, but I don't know. We'll see.
Maybe a shortened.
Maybe do like a weekend episode or something. But what else? What's the top of your list, Ryan? What else do we need to talk about? What else do we need to talk about? Because I use my words before we go.
I just really want to take a second and see what everyone's feelings are in terms of how did you feel going into this reading up to this point? Simply because each one of these books has had a different feel as we've gone through. It's been paced differently. There's different aspects. And like with Oathbringer, I remember us talking about that it felt slower. You know, good stuff happening, whatever, but it felt slower at the beginning.
Mm-hmm.
There's a lot that is happening in this story. It's spread across a lot of things, and just by sheer quantity of of things that we're following, there's a lot to follow. But it still, to me, felt the beginning didn't feel too slowly paced. But especially as we got into part 2, all of a sudden I'm starting to go, okay, a little bit. I feel like we're slowing down pace a little bit because we've got to get up deeper in these things. And then we end part 2 with my favorite thing in fantasy literature. Let's have a court scene. You know, we're not actually in the court scene, but we're going to have
a trial.
Yeah. We're going to go and have a trial. I don't know why I despise them so much, but every time there's a trial sequence in a fantasy book, I'm like, why?
Was it Towers of Midnight that just broke you?
Yeah. Yeah. You've got, if you find them guilty, we got to figure out how to get them out. If you find them innocent, we wasted our time. Like, come on.
Yeah. I don't know. Although as far as the pace of the book, at least up to this point in part 2, what's happening in this, and apparently this is something that Brandon mentioned to people early on in the writing process, is that he is fully familiar of his tendency toward the Sanderlanche, as we all now call it, right?
Right.
He knows that that's how he tends to write books. You build, and then just have this like orgasmic explosion of action at the end of a book, and it all, whatever. He deliberately put his Sanderlanche at the very beginning of this book. And so when you read part 1, you're having the climactic battle scene with the 4th bridge, and the people are flying all over the place, and you get 8 different categories of power, your magic users flying around fighting each other, and this is the Sanderlanche in part 1, and at the beginning of part 1, and then it finishes, and then you go and set up the rest of the story. It's very strange. And I appreciate that he's trying to do something a little bit different and not just follow the exact same pattern in every single book. I do appreciate that, but it does make for a very weird read, especially at the beginning.
It did, and this might sound strange coming from the punching guy, but it was almost too much right up front for me. I mean, because I liked that it got right into it, and we're just going to jump right into the action, but all of a sudden we have these core of Windrunners and all these edge dancers and all of these different.
He establishes very quickly the transition of time and how much things have grown in the last bit of time since we finished Oathbringer till now, where we had, one of every Power Ranger out there.
Yeah.
And now we have.
And now
teams.
we have all of these armies of Radiance, and it felt just immediately to have it thrown in your face like that felt like much all of a sudden, and it felt like it was in danger of me going, oh, this is all now passé. But then once it's done, that's done, and we get into the normalizing stuff where we actually get into the characters and seeing their progressions, that actually felt refreshing to get to Kaladin and get to our characters and see, oh, hey, they're doing stuff that is not Radiant related necessarily.
Yeah.
It felt refreshing.
The problem that I have with it is a very simple one, and you were kind of skirting close to it, Ken, and that's that this action is unearned.
Yes.
And so you may be a Punchin guy, but part of the reason that Punchin is so great in many of the books that we read is because you care.
Yeah, because we get that.
It's the old
it gives
argument.
us a reason.
It's the old argument about why the A New Hope lightsaber fight is so great, is because it means something, even if it's two like crusty old men, waving sticks around, but it means something, and so it's a great action scene. And so in this one, sure, it means something, and yes, we know these characters, but the setup isn't there. We didn't get to see the edge dancers form as a group. We didn't get to see, we got to see Bridge 4 come together, but now there's 200, 300 Windrunners going around. We didn't get to see any of the progression with our bad guys our antagonists, and how they set up their societies and what kind of powers they have. And so it's an exciting action sequence, but I just didn't care. And
I think that's the reason. I think because it's unearned.
So it kind of dragged a little bit. Stephanie, what did you think?
I'm just going to sit here and let you three talk because I don't know if I noticed any of whatever it is you guys just said.
Well, let me say this really quick, if I may. Sorry, I don't want to cut you off there, but that's why the siege, the raid on Urithiru felt more earned to me, I guess, because it felt more exciting.
Yeah.
Once they got there, and I was surprised that they got there in the end of part 2 and not in the end of part 4. He did really front load the action in this.
I have to say I disagree with it not being earned, simply because its purpose isn't a payoff. Its purpose is to establish that time has progressed, that we are now at this stage of things.
Okay.
And if we want to go back and see how things were formed or whatever, that's for novellas and other pieces. It's to explore the forming of the unseen court and everything. We can see all that in novellas and other moments, but Brandon does not have the pages available in front of him, the runway available to him.
Ha. Yeah, right.
He does not have that to give us the build on everything. I don't think that's an option.
So starting your book with an action sequence, totally time-tested, and it's a great way to start your book. I have no problem with that. I'm just saying it's so big, and it's so extended, and we get so much information thrown at us. It's a bit like the prologue to The Way of Kings. One of the complaints that people have about the prologue of The Way of Kings is you have this action sequence with Szeth, slaughtering all the guards and going killing Gavilar, but that's punctuated by paragraphs full of explanation of how he's able to do what he does. And, what surges are, and this is the second bind or surge or whatever. And it's kind of a similar thing here, where it's like the action takes forever because it's being used as that setup. Where in another story structure, those things would have been set up elsewhere, and then you just get this crazy action sequence, and you know what's going on, so you don't have to stop and have explanations thrown at you. So anyway, that's that's where I'm coming from. You're welcome to disagree, obviously.
No, that's fine. I think the purpose of this is, like I said, to establish that, but also to let us see how the bad guys fight now. It introduces the pursuer, and there's a sense of honor with our
Windrunner fused.
Windrunner fused, yeah. There's a lot.
Whatever the heavenly ones.
Yeah, I could break that down quite a bit. Like I said, we've already pushed a lot of time on this, and we have not even touched most of our main characters.
Oh my gosh, we didn't talk at all about Venli. I mean,
Venli.
Here's the thing.
How about Kaladin and his new, like, you put failed upwards in this. I'm not really sure failed is the right word.
That was offensive, Ken.
Oh, I'm sorry. I didn't mean to offend.
But like, we haven't talked about Kaladin's direction, what Dalinar's doing. Like, where there's
we haven't touched Dalinar at all.
There's so much.
Oh, okay.
Did you say you wanted to touch
Here's what we're gonna do. We're gonna do our normal episode structure. We're gonna talk about parts 1 and 2. We're done with that now. We'll do parts 3 and 4. We'll discuss part 5, and then we will do one or more bonus episodes.
We'll have like 6 episodes of actually discussing the whole book. And what we'll do is, these episodes are just meant to be kind of fun companions as people read along. It's not meant to be exhaustive. No, we're not getting to everything. We won't get to everything. We could devote an entire, not just episode, but we could make a new podcast just discussing the Stromlight Archive, and we would never get to everything. Okay, so that's not the purpose. This is really just meant to be kind of fun for, when you're done reading parts 1 and 2, you come listen to this and enjoy it. But yeah, there are other things that I think are worth discussing. So as we get to the end of these, what I want people to do is email me. Okay, so we do discussions on Reddit, we do discussions on Discord, and that's fine. I will listen to people there. But if you email me by going to thelegendarium.com and say, you know what, I really wish you guys would have talked about this, email it to me. I will put it in a folder, and we will sort through those and discuss some of those things in those bonus episodes after we're done with this. How does that sound? Is that good?
Yes.
I'm for it.
Ryan, you're the one you're the co-host. I need your sign off for this.
I think that's a great idea. I have things I want to talk about still.
Ryan's going to be emailing you
to make sure that he can talk about what he wants to talk about. Well, and the thing is, But I also know that there are some things that people will want us to talk about that are important enough to the story that it's worth talking about. Like I'm coming back to Kaladin because I love him and he's my character and this, but dealing with his, we talked already about Brandon dealing with Shallan's, her issues. Kaladin has PTSD. Kaladin is dealing with all of these things and having to deal with a value, a sense of self-worth and everything when he is promoted away from his role because he needs to find a new way to do it because he's not going to be as effective. He's going to get himself killed and he's going to get other people killed. And oh man, it broke my heart to watch that happen. And I was so angry. I was so angry when I read it the first time. I'm like, you cannot take him out of the fight. You cannot take him out of it because it's going to break him. It's going to break him again. And it's going to put him in the worst place to do this. He needs to be with his people. He needs to be in the battle. That's where he's best. And I appreciate so much learning I'm wrong in this. I had a hard time with what was happening with Kaladin. But we also got the most die-hard, awesome Kaladin sequences coming, in this story. I'm excited.
And when you say die hard,
I literally mean Nakatomi Plaza.
Okay, yeah.
I literally mean that this book was Stromlight Archive Die Hard edition. So.
Die Hard with a Sprengens.
Oh, okay. No, you did not say that.
I hope you came up with that immediately because if you worked that,
I was actually going to say something else, and then Sprengens came out, and now I kind of want to kill myself.
I'm trying to figure out a good yippee-ki-yay some option there. So
PG-13. All right. So again, we didn't talk about everything. I am glad you mentioned that. Slip that in there, Ryan. That's good that you got that in there. But we are over time. We're going to call it here. There are 800,000 other things from parts 1 and 2 that we could discuss. So email me. You can go directly to our website, thelegendarium.com, click on the contact link. That goes straight to me. Or you can email Craig at thelegendariumpodcast.com, and I get it there too. So with that, I'm sorry, all of you screaming at your earbuds these days, probably, that we didn't talk about this, that, or the other. So I do want to hear what you want us to talk about. Okay, you guys cool with that? Here we go. Parts 3 and 4 will come up in, a couple weeks. We'll talk about them then. See you guys then?
Mm-hmm. All right, fine.